A company that scales, they're earning 50, 60, 70% margins at like 1,000 employees, 2,000 employees. Like you can look at the gross margin of any software company and they're fantastic. The gross margin of an agency, you're not getting really better than 60%. Like that's the top end of what you can really, like, there are edge cases. So if you're out there and you're at 62%, don't message me. But in general, you're not going to get much above that. You're not getting 90%. That's for damn sure. Just because of the salary costs. If you want to sell an additional project as an agency, you have to have people that will do that. And if you're at 100% utilization, you have to add people to do that. You have to add cost every new revenue you bring in. And it's not like you can sell another widget and have the same cost basis, or essentially the same cost basis, for that additional sale. Your cost basis increases. And so that's the core idea behind agencies not scaling. You want to make decisions like a professional service firm, not like a scalable startup.
In de agencywereld heb je omzet en heb je winst. En die twee zijn zeker niet hetzelfde. Misschien vond je dat een gigantische open deur. Wel, neem het dan van ons aan. Heel wat agency-owners waarmee wij spreken vertellen ons dat ze, zeker in het begin, veel te hard gefocust waren op groei. Klanten binnenhalen, extra diensten opzetten, teams uitbreiden, tot dan blijkt dat meer omzet niet automatisch meer winst betekent. Integendeel, soms voelt het alsof je alleen maar harder moet werken voor minder marge. Welkom bij de Agency Life podcast. Ik ben Robin en vandaag ga ik noodgedwongen even solo, want mijn fantastische co-host Louise is helaas ziek. Veel beterschap, Louise. Maar voor jullie, lieve luisteraars, verandert er niks, dus geen stress, want wij hebben weer een stevige aflevering voor jou klaarstaan. Ik praat namelijk met iemand die niet alleen een duidelijke visie heeft op wat agencies vooruit helpt, maar ook de data om dat te onderbouwen. Nicholas, aka Nick Petroski, die verliet Wall Street om Promethean Research op te richten. Een bureau dat trends en strategieën binnen de agencywereld analyseert. Vandaag helpt hij agency professionals, zoals jij, om slimmere, gefundeerde keuzes te maken. Met zijn geheime wapen, keiharde cijfers. Dus, wat stuurt nu echt winstgevende groei aan bij creatieve en digitale bureaus? Hoe slagen kleinere agencies erin om ver boven een gewichtsklasse te boksen? Wat is de sweet spot qua agency size en profit? En aan welke knoppen draaien de best presterende bureaumanagers vandaag? We duiken er diep in. Welkom bij Agency Life. Maar eerst een kleine tip, beste luisteraar. Wist je namelijk dat je het jezelf nog makkelijker kan maken om alle Agency Life content binnen te halen door je namelijk gewoon te abonneren op de Agency Life nieuwsbrief via agencylife.be of agencylife.nl. Dan droppen wij om de 2 weken de allernieuwste episode recht in jouw mailbox. En dat is niet alles, want in die 2 weken doomscrollen Louise en ik ons helemaal suf op LinkedIn, zodat jij dat niet hoeft te doen. Graag gedaan. Jij krijgt alleen het goud. Een straffe podcast, de beste post, de scherpste inzichten en de heetste verhalen uit het agencyleven. agencylife.be of agencylife.nl dus. Abonneren en liefst nu. Hello and welcome, Mr. Nick Petroski. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's always great to chat with you, and I'm glad we get to record it this time.
In the next hour or so, we'll dive into your latest report on the agency industry. But before we do that, can you briefly explain what the report is about? What type of agencies did you include? Which regions, etc.?
Yeah, so our work really focuses on things we call digital agencies. So that's any kind of creative agency, marketing agency, web dev agency, dev agency. They're all kind of under the same umbrella because they do stuff with pixels and code and marketing. And they all kind of fit together. And so we have this list of all the services that an agency can do in our definition. And that's all in the report. So if you do anything in that list, like what I just mentioned, or even beyond that, this is the research that really focuses on you. And it's nice because there's not a ton out there that really does that really dives into what makes a creative agency really good, that's backed by data and facts. There's a lot of opinion. There's a lot of ways to build these things. And that's one of the main things I learned doing this was like, there's no one right way, but it's good to see which ways are right ways and which ways maybe aren't optimal, aren't the best. So that's our focus. We do a lot of work in the North American market. We have a decent representation from Europe, both Eastern and Western Europe. Some decent stuff from Australia as well. So we're moderately global, but those are our main focus areas.
And how many agencies did you include in your report?
In this latest one, it was a little over 150.
You've written extensively about how each wave of tech has sparked a new generation of agency models. What are we seeing now?
Yeah, it's we're seeing the tail end of what that new tech drives. So you had this beat kind of every decade where new tech would come on the scene. Social media came out 2010s ish. That drove a ton of marketing companies, a ton of design companies, a ton of copywriting companies. That drove them to deliver new kind of solutions to businesses. And we haven't had something like that click in the last like 5-ish years. So you're seeing the tail end of that kind of drive where you had SaaS companies being built up and they needed dev talent, they needed design talent that's outside of their organization. So these agencies supplied them with that. And right now we're kind of sitting there waiting. We're kind of like, hey, what is the next thing? Is it AI? Because that's a real question. Like we're diving into that pretty significantly because we want to know, what does that do for an agency? Does that actually drive additional revenue? Does it drive profit margins? Does it drive them out of business? Like where is this? Because there's a lot of people talking about, pontificating what it could do. It's nice to see what it's actually doing.
Yeah.
And right now, not a lot. Like it's surprisingly not a lot. So we're waiting for that next tech to come. We're looking at some stuff, but it's just not, there's nothing huge in the market that we're like, that's it. I can point to that. That's what's driving the next decade of growth.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. And your vision is that you're somewhat mellow on the impact of AI or the current impact of AI on the business model. We'll dive in a bit deeper into that later on. Let's talk about the numbers and how difficult the year 2023 was. Because in your most recent industry report, you marked that year as the year that agency growth has kind of fallen and the sales pipelines have been drying up. What was the main culprit there, in your opinion?
Yeah, so you got to go back a little further than that to get some context on why that was such a tough year and why 2024 was such a tough year. So you had 2020, when the pandemic hit, you had an initial super stall out of spend. So brands just held up and they said, we're not dropping any money anywhere. We don't know what the heck's going on. Midway through that year, you had this unthawing of brand spend, specifically in the digital space, because they realized, okay, the world isn't literally exploding. Like things will be bad, but it's not going to like completely decimate everybody. So we got to spend a little bit. And then they realized, okay, nobody's in person right now. So we have these digital plans for the next 5-ish years. Let's pull all that forward. So a ton of that spend that was slated for 22, 23, 24, 25 even was pulled forward into 2021 and spent then essentially. So now what we're seeing is a few years after that, because everything was rushed, because nothing was really in place, you have this issue of they had these ROIs that they calculated on an interest rate of 1% back then. And they didn't even get the ROI off of that. So now that interest rates rose over the last few years, now that those ROIs didn't even come in positive at those lower interest rates, now they're seeing like, okay, I'm not spending on any of this. Like this is we're cut and spend again completely. Like we're not doing it. So you have these repercussions hitting in 23, 24, and partly into 2025 now, where this pull forward in spend and this increase in interest rates and this lack of just general growth has made it super hard for digital agencies to go into a space because you're selling growth, you're selling margins. And if you're selling growth and they're not buying growth because it's not happening, it's going to make the sales cycle almost impossible.
So we're still feeling like the compounding effects of these different factors that happened post-COVID, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like 4 years ago, it's still impacting us right now.
Yeah. And do you foresee this being any different in a positive way in the near future? Not trying to get to Nostradamus with you, but no.
let me crystal ball this.
Yeah.
I would like to say yes, but we need a catalyst.
Yeah.
We need something that makes it. We need something that makes it so that businesses clamor after a new capability. Usually, that's a technology.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing that right now, but I think AI could be that if there's real value that's unlocked with it. Like even in the spend that we're seeing from brands is like experimentational spend. It's not like roll out, let's go hard on this, put this everywhere spend. So we're still in this space where we're lacking a catalyst for this growth to explode.
Yeah. Let's reuse that word catalyst once again, because you call new tech one of the most obvious candidates for driving such an agency evolution. Now, are some agencies or some types of agencies more equipped to evolve in this new wave? Are there certain traits that make an agency, let's say, adaptable?
Yeah, absolutely. I talk a lot about getting the fundamentals right. So when you build an agency, being able to have a steady, repeatable source of revenue coming in. I don't care what that is, but it has to be a machine that is reliable, that you can always go back to. Even if it slows down, it doesn't stop. And that's one of the core fundamentals of being able to run a shop. Beyond that, it's solid production. You have to do pretty good work. You don't have to do excellent, the best ever, number one designer in the world work, but you have to do pretty good work. If you have these fundamentals in place, and there's others, there's account management, there's utilization rates, there's making sure that you're earning enough margin for what you're doing, and thus to do that pricing correctly. If you have those fundamentals in place, what that does is it affords you a little bit of leeway. It affords your agency that space financially and operationally where you don't have everybody burnt out at the end of the day. And instead of being burnt out, they can go experiment with AI. They can go experiment with new tech. They could say, hey, I have this problem. I have like 7.5 hours a day where I got to do client work, but I can spend a half hour a day trying to make that client work more efficient. When you have that, you can adapt to just about anything. You can be super nimble. And that's one of the real benefits of being a digital agency is you can spin almost on a dime and go after a new market in a new location, or you can go add a new technology to your roster, a new service to your roster. You can do a lot of stuff very quickly and react to the market very quickly when you have those fundamentals in place.
So as an agency, if you're not experimenting, innovating, improving with at least like a smidgen of your time, then you might be in a dire place in some place.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's talk profit. We name drop the word profit a lot in our intro, because in a landscape that's getting tougher and more complex, I'm curious to learn what sets the winners apart. Your latest report on digital agencies shows that within your research, the average margins are down to 15 to 17%. Now, what are the top performers doing differently?
Okay. Number one, they have pricing figured out. So they understand what their value is to the client, and whether or not they're full, like, baked in value based pricing and fully bought into that world, they know that their value, the value of their work that they deliver, is above some hourly rate that, someone's going to charge to, that's a freelancer or something like that. So pricing is dialed in, and they know what the heck they're doing there. They also know what it costs them to do that work in both dollars and hours. So they know what their team costs. They know what their team makeup looks like. And they're good at maintaining a full team. Like, they're good at making sure that their team is not sitting around doing nothing. So utilization rates are a huge player there, because they can manage essentially team capacity with their utilization rates, and making sure that they're both not burning out on the high end, but also not underutilizing the team on the low end.
Yeah.
Those are the pricing and utilization are the two main levers. Some consultants in the space will discuss salaries, because that's a huge expense at digital agencies, but there's not much you can do there. Like, you can't cut salaries in half and say, well, we're only going to hire people for $30,000 a year. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work. You're not going to get anywhere like that. So as long as salaries are within like a normal-ish band, and we have salary reports so you can see what those look like. But as long as they're within a normal band, I don't stress too much about them. It's not worth it.
Okay. And then let's look at the negative side of things. Which cost buckets do you see are the most dangerous right now? Or to put it differently, where do margins silently disappear?
Man, that's a good question. Scope creep is huge.
Yeah.
So you sell a fixed project, and then you let scope creep come in, and all of a sudden your margins are zero or negative. That's probably the easiest way that it happens. Another way, which is super frustrating, is there are management missteps is the nicest way to put it.
That's a very nice term.
Management missteps, where individuals at agencies are afraid to put the real hours that they're working on a project down, because they think that they're going to get shit on from a managerial perspective, and they're going to get like scolded because it took them 5 hours and the estimate was 3 hours. And so what that ends up being is essentially a non-accurate representation of what the work costs. And then that doesn't magically solve itself down the road. That ends up in a burnt out employee who is less effective across everything. And all of a sudden, all of your estimates are off, your whole team's off, and it cascades, it waterfalls down into not a good spot profitably, or even just like being a human. It just kind of sucks.
The scope creep thing, but still kind of baffles me. Ever since I've been working for this company, we've been making assets, educational assets, ebooks, blogs about scope creep. It seems to be as old as time itself. Mm-hmm. Why do agencies still allow scope creep to happen? Is this some sort of miscommunication issue? Are they not daring enough to speak to the client? How do you see this?
I think it's a few things. It's really easy to say, oh, just say no. No. Just say no when they ask for an extra landing page or something like that. I think it's rooted in not having a good account management system and not understanding and being confident in the value you provide to your client, and communicating that regularly, and having the client actually understand and appreciate it. Because if the client understands what you're actually doing, they're less likely to push for things that are out of scope. Like, they in that ideal relationship, they're happy to keep you happy because they're getting more out of your engagement than what they're putting in, right? Like, you're getting a positive ROI. And if that ROI is good enough, they shouldn't be pushing for like nickels and dimes every place. And if they are, you as an agency leader or an account manager or a salesperson, whoever's running your projects, new sales or additional scope on projects, you need to be able to push back with that. And that's where that confidence piece lives, and that understanding of the value, because you can very easily come back and say, hey, you're asking for something almost nonsensy, that's actually going to have a big impact on me. Like, you're getting a great ROI on this. We need to be able to charge for that to make sure that we're paying the team, to make sure that we're earning our margin and everything else. I think it really boils down to being able to have those conversations. And communication is weird. It's hard to have those hard conversations at first. As you do it and as you build that skill, it becomes trivial. It becomes easy. It's the default. And that's the kind of muscle that you want to build at your agency, is being able to have that kind of that at first strange conversation where it says, no, we're worth more than this. We're not going to do that extra landing page just for free. Like, you have to pay for value. That's what this is an exchange of value. We're still going to take care of you. We're still going to do damn good work. We're still going to be better than the other options out there, and we're going to be faster, and it's going to do the thing you want it to do. But you have to invest in that.
Yeah. So the better performers, I guess, are more experienced and more daring to say, no, our work provides this value. I can prove this to you. And that's why we're not doing A, B, or C.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically.
Yeah. Are there any specific agency sizes or setups that are more vulnerable to like margin compression?
In general, the larger you are, the lower your margins. So agencies definitely don't scale. It's not something like software where you can sell additional revenue and earn higher margin on that additional revenue. So as they get bigger, the margins compress. There's a larger support network required to run a bigger agency is a big reason why. Pricing changes a little bit. You would think that the larger you are, the higher you could price, but it's not always linear. It doesn't always track like that. It depends on your service mix too. So if you're running a digital agency and you have been offering the same kind of service mix for the last 10 years, naturally the way this industry works is new tech comes out, brands want that capability that new tech provides. Old tech is essentially a table stakes conversation now. So that gets pulled into the brand itself through in-housing, or it's outsourced to someone cheaper. So if you stay stagnant on your service mix, you're essentially just letting the industry kind of pass you by and compress your margins and pricing at each step. So I think that lack of, if you decide not to be nimble and not to evolve, that will compress margins for sure.
So Nick, staying with the size topic, you've of course benchmarked agency size versus profit. What, according to your research, is the sweet spot?
Yeah, so it's really going to depend on where you want to be, what you want out of your agency. If you want some really high margin thing, you're going to want to go towards the lower end. You're going to want to stay under 10 employees, maybe. It's a different kind of structure to manage. It's a different kind of animal, but that is the spot where we see the highest margins. Now, if you want something that is, I don't know, humongous for whatever reason, like you want to go sell it and you want to get an exit, and that exit needs to be pretty significant, tens of millions of dollars, you're going to want to go to a higher number of employees. You're going to want to go a little larger, but probably not so crazy high that you become compressed on your EBITDA.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's going to be the multiple that they base this off of. And that compression starts to happen moderately after 50 to 75 employees. That's where that starts getting really compressed. And then once you're at like 150, 200 employees, those margins are pretty much, they're as low as they're going to get.
I think we saw that research or those stats also reflected in our own agency benchmark that we ran last year, that indeed at like the 50-55 mark, we see the tipping point of diminishing returns.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So, I'm glad it matches up.
Yeah. So it's always good to see that the one research kind of mimics or has the same conclusions as the other, just to prove we're not just putting any old graphs inside of a slide deck. But what are some smart operational practices that you've seen in agencies to stay profitable beyond that 70 to 50 threshold?
Be super aggressive with your pricing. So to to do that, there's precursors. So you have to have your positioning dialed in. You have to be able to communicate the value. And number one, you have to know the value that you provide. You also have to be able to communicate the value that you provide and who you provide it to. Once you do that, you can be more aggressive with your pricing, because in your client's eyes, you become the option. And they're willing to pay for that because that's valuable. So that's number one. Number two is to make sure that you're not letting utilization get away from you. So it's really easy when you have lulls in revenue, sales, to essentially just have a team sitting there doing not much. And that's really challenging from a margin standpoint. Mm-hmm. So that ability to maintain utilization rates isn't just managerial. It's not just AM, PM work. There's a huge component of your rev gen team that is responsible for your utilization rates. And I don't think that that's typically connected. One way to solve that we saw really at the bigger shops initially, and now we saw this come down into the smaller shops, is they will use a fairly large contractor bench. They will maintain trusted contractors that they can flex up or down based on their revenue, and maintain a team of, say, 100 employees, production employees, and then maintain a contractor bench of 100, 150 contractors. And they give them a little bit of work to keep them kind of busy, to keep them in the thing. But when they ramp up and when they make big sales and when they hit a hot point in the market, they can tell their revenue team to just go after that. And I think that's probably the most overlooked kind of piece of advice.
Yeah, that's fairly interesting, because if I understand it correctly, a well-earning digital agency that gets good margins might have 100 people on the payroll, but then 100 to 150 freelancers, contractors, waiting to be called upon, instead of just having like a 150 or 200 person payroll.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're seeing that even at smaller companies now too. This shocked me. This really surprised me. And this came out in the latest research that we did, where we saw small shops, 10 employees, 20 employees, maintaining contractor benches in that space where they had maybe not as significant as a 1-to-1 full-time to a contractor, but maybe 1 to 0.5. So 10 employees, 5 contractors.
Okay. Speaking of this specific cohort of the 10 FTE shops, you previously gave them, statistically in your research, some of the best margins, but you also said in your report that some of these agencies with 10 people or less are disappearing. Why is that?
Yeah, they're shrinking a little bit, and I think there's someone has to be that contractor, right? Yeah. Like you start to growing a shop out of that 10 employee space is not easy. You can get to your first million. I don't want to say easily, but fairly trivially. Breaking from that to the 25-ish employee range is pretty hard. There are a lot of challenges there, and a lot of firms get stuck in that 20 employee range, because you need, it's essentially a step function. So your revenue doesn't go linear. Your ability to deliver that revenue and maintain that revenue growth doesn't grow linearly. It grows in these step functions. And making that step is humongous. It takes a ton of effort. So I think there's been, from the free form answers that we get to these survey questions, a lot of times people that own these agencies in that space, in that 10 employee space, are kind of burnt out. So there's a space where they're thinking, man, this agency, building a large agency isn't for them. And so they will earn more going back to just being a contractor, which is a little strange, but like if you can pull that off, that's pretty solid. That's a solid move. And then you have others that are growing out into the larger agencies that have made that jump and made that transition. Okay.
So if you're one of those smaller agencies struggling, perhaps you should just throw yourself into the freelance contractor pool, and that's where your bigger benefit will lie. Let's talk about specialization, staffing, and AI for our next session. because there's more to staying profitable than streamlining operations and whatnot. Your business strategy, of course, also matters. And specializations has long been seen as one of the paths to premium pricing. Is that still true in 2025?
Yes, but it's more detailed than that. So in the say 5 years ago, you could specialize and pick an industry and pick a service mix, and that's all you needed. That puts you above it, like most of the industry, say 70% of the industry. Um, Now you have real hyper focused agencies. So there was one that he reached out, and he was a dentist for a while, and apparently he knew a little bit about coding and websites and a little bit about marketing, and started to do dentist websites for other dentists that he knew.
That is
That
quite
turned,
specific indeed.
oh yeah, that's it, exactly it. And so then he essentially built an entire agency just serving dentists. I believe it was doing like brochure websites, like marketing brochure websites. I think he evolved that into something else now. But that's the level of specificity that you need essentially in this market. And that's hard to hear for an agency with maybe 75 employees.
Mhm.
That's kind of weird. You're like, okay, well, how can we really, should we shut off all of these other revenue things? The answer is no. Don't do that. But as you get bigger, make sure that who you serve is somewhat adjacent enough to be able to say, hey, we did this for them. And that actually resonates with the person you're talking to.
So deep vertical expertise and real sector insights kind of win the day.
Absolutely. 100%. Because you could tell them something they don't know about something that they think they know a lot about, that they do know a lot about. And when you can do that, and you could walk in and be like, hey, this is happening in your industry. We saw this with a few other people. They're dealing with this, and this is how they're solving that problem, and they're getting these results.
Hmm.
That's an instant hire. That instantly puts you up above the generalist, or the guy that I just mentioned that does an unrelated specialty.
Hmm. There's a great quote in your report, and it reads like this: Growth today depends less on capability and more on being valuably different. You also have the numbers to back that up. Agencies that expanded services grew by 9.7%, those that repositioned by 8%, and those who did nothing just 1.1%. What's driving that split?
That's that nimbleness.
Yeah.
That's that adjusting to the market. That's those agencies that I talked about that got the fundamentals right, that are able to experiment, that are able to have some irons in the fire, that say like, hey, this could be an opportunity, that could be an opportunity. Let's put some small teams and spend some effort on both of those opportunities. And one of them hits. And one of them's like, oh, okay, let's put more resources into that one that's hitting, and then let's grow through that. That's that nimbleness. That's represented there exactly.
Are clients becoming, let's say, more sophisticated in how they assess agency expertise,
Mhm.
or is it the other way around? And is it getting more difficult for clients to spot the difference between agencies?
It's a little bit of both. I think there's, and it goes back to what are you providing? What are what service mixes are we talking about? Because as clients understand how to do certain things, once they understood how to make a social post, they brought that in house instantly because they don't want to pay additional margin expenses to be able to outsource that. So you have certain services that clients are frankly not even really purchasing from agencies at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have other services. SEO is one with the generative. What are they calling it? Generative engine optimization (GEO).
Something along those lines, yeah.
Yeah, it's not, I'm not in the business, so I don't need to know. I don't feel bad about that one. But they're offering that now, and that's one of those new techs that we were talking about. It could generate additional growth for this industry. They're clamoring for that kind of help because they don't have it in house. They don't. Clients run their teams super lean. Like they do not add additional headcount typically when they don't have to. And you go to a client, and they're usually like, you talk to their team, and they're like, we need this done for us because we have one person per region. And you're like, what? And so you have these conversations where the clients are typically really strapped. So they're looking for that kind of new capability to be done for them, and they're willing to pay. They have become a little more sophisticated in that they have better transparency on pricing now. They have a better understanding of pricing and market rates than most agencies do. Yeah. So if they put out a bid for something, if they put out an RFP, they will get enough data back from just that exercise to know what the rough rate is for that kind of service. So they're sophisticated in that sense. There is pretty significant financial pressure on them now. So your CFO is going to run through every project at this point. Mm-hmm. There's not a project that's not crossing the CFO's desk. Before it was marketing or tech holding those strings. And that's when growth was kind of easy. And now that growth is kind of hard and margin protection is really at the forefront of a lot of clients' minds, they're going to be looking at that ROI calculation that you have provided for them, and they're going to be scrutinizing it a little bit more.
Okay. I'm going to hit you with another interesting quote from your own report. Let's see if you recognize it. Specialization is no longer a differentiator. It's the baseline. And you add to that 84% of agencies now identify as specialists. Now, what separates meaningful specialization from just claiming the term?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. It jumps right off of that kind of table stakes comment I made earlier. You know, you're seeing mid 80% for the last, I think, 3 or 4 years, of agencies that identify as specialists, and that's self-identified. So I don't dig in and say, okay, yes, you actually are a specialist. No, you are not. I don't grade the degree of specialist. But what I do is I look at their financial results, and I look at, okay, do the ones that say they're specialists perform better? And I mean, the answer is 100% yes. But those differentiators, even within the ones that are specialists or say they're specialists, there are some that grow significantly faster than others. And I think you can specialize in something that doesn't matter to the market. Yeah, I could go build an agency today that churns out AI social posts for a penny each and sell that to somebody. That sucks.
How are high-performing agencies keeping quality high when they have this leaner and outsourced delivery model with the contractors and the freelancers and whatnot?
There's been a lot of work that agencies have done over the last few years to vet contractors. And that's part of why they're keeping those benches, and they're protective of those contractor benches, because once they find someone who does good work, high quality work, and does it in a timely fashion and communicates and all of the things you want from a good contractor, once they find those people, they want to hold on to them like crazy. They do not want them to fly off and go to somewhere else. So they've been pretty diligent, one, about vetting and finding them, and two, about making sure that there's enough work to keep them at least somewhat interested. Might not be 40 hours a week, but it's something more than 5 hours every few months.
Let's talk about one elephant in the room called AI, because in your research, you noted a steady rise in what you call AI development and implementation as a service as well.
Okay, let's split it. Let's talk about themselves first, and then we can dive into some client work stuff. For themselves, they're having a lot of trouble integrating it. The workflow integration, I don't know if it hasn't been able to deliver on what people said it could deliver, or if it just takes too much effort, or if it's too fragile. So any one of those things can make it kind of fall down. Mm-hmm. And what we found was, when AI kind of hit the scene, 2021-ish, 22-ish, we saw a mad dash for people to run in and try to implement something there, try to do it, because they thought, okay, if I don't, I'm going to be left behind. And that was the general feeling of everybody. We asked, like, are you ahead or behind on AI? And the average person said they were pretty significantly behind the curve. And that's, like, obviously impossible, but everybody had that feeling of, uh-oh, everyone else is taking off.
Yeah.
What we found recently, this last survey we did, February of this year, maybe, that kind of rush to implement AI pulled back really significantly. So they are putting things in the parking lot, putting AI in the parking lot, and not pushing it at nearly as hard as they were, because they just they either tried and couldn't, or they looked at other people, other agencies, and saw like, you're spending a lot of time and money on this and you're not getting the results that you need. So we can't invest in that right now, especially when in such a tough sales environment. Moving on to how they're using it in their client work, the ones that are offering like AI dev, they're doing everything from kind of like automation, marketing automation stuff.
Yeah.
There's that piece where they're using ChatGPT and Claude and all the others, and they're using them essentially as like Zapier blocks, and that's a thing that there's definitely some value there. There's also others that are spinning up private LLMs for different brands, and that's where I think that's where the real technical prowess is. That's where the real value lies. Um, there are not a ton of those.
Yeah.
Those are few and far between right now. I think it's hard to do.
Have you actually seen AI expand margins at agencies, and how?
Yeah. So a few years ago, when we first started looking into AI, we saw agencies getting productivity gains from their production team of like 10 to 30-ish%. That obviously trails right down into margin expansion. The place that we saw that, though, was mostly in coding. So that when Copilot came in, that really kind of it made a lot of the challenges, the tedious challenges, go away a little bit. So you could code faster, you could get stuff out more quickly.
Some productivity benefits for the coders, for the copywriters, and then every once in a while an agency that actually builds LLMs for their customers, but not like a tidal wave of like innovative new AI things. No. Okay.
No, not at all. If you look at the 10-year run of what the average margins are
Yeah.
for agencies, they've stayed in a pretty narrow band. They've fluctuated 14 to like 17% for net margins over the last 10 years. If AI was doing something crazy to it, we would see it there for sure. If it's not there, we would see it in the revenue per FTE, right? Like the amount of revenue that you could be able to generate per employee would shoot through the roof if AI was making everybody 10x better.
Yeah. But then again, it was very difficult for AI to keep up with the promise that all the hype men and women on LinkedIn are throwing at it.
100%.
Yeah. Let's get into one of your more provocative ideas, that old scaling one. Digital agencies don't scale. Perhaps you covered it a bit earlier, but feel free to take the stage again and dive deeper. How come digital agencies don't scale? What do you mean exactly?
So when you talk about scale, it has a definition. Like it has meaning to that word. And the reason that I wrote that post was because I was seeing digital agency leaders make decisions as if they were a company that scaled. And you can't do that, because you're going to run into serious financial implications down the road when ultimately you don't scale. So one of the big issues was taking on investment. I had a prospect, they weren't a client, that was telling me that they were about to take on a Series A as a digital agency, and that their plan was to scale up to some crazy number, and obviously they were going to need to pay out their investors. That doesn't happen. That, like, you can have a sale, you can grow, but you're not going to make this kind of play where a company that scales, they're earning 50, 60, 70% margins at like 1,000 employees, 2,000 employees. Like, you can look at the gross margin of any software company, and they're fantastic. The gross margin of an agency, you're not you're not getting really better than 60%. Like that's the top end of what you can really, like, there are edge cases. So if you're out there and you're at 62%, don't message me. But in general, you're not going to get much above that. You're not getting 90%. That's for damn sure. Just because of the salary costs. If you want to sell an additional project as an agency, you have to have people that will do that. And if you're at 100% utilization, you have to add people to do that. You have to add cost every new revenue you bring in. And it's not like you can sell another widget and have the same cost basis, or essentially the same cost basis, for that additional sale. Your cost basis increases. And so that's the core idea behind agencies not scaling. You want to make decisions like a professional service firm, not like a scalable startup.
So why are some of these, I presume, smart agency heads then pipe dreaming about scalability?
Because it's attractive. Scalability is beautiful when it works. It's what drove the whole SaaS game for 20 years. Like it is something that if you can build a business model where that works, and agencies have tried with productized services to varying degrees of success, you want to get that. Like that's the goal of a lot of them. But it's not something, and it's been ambiguous too. So there's a lot of people that'll go out there and they'll say, I grew my agency to $1 million, whatever, and listen to me, buy my course, scale your agency to $1 million and tomorrow. Some kind of BS charlatan nonsense. There's a lot of that out there in this space. And it has done a huge disservice because it's confused a lot of people and made that word kind of meaningless in this. And so you'll see people talking about, oh, look at my MRR. The second that an agency leader tells me about their MRR, I know there's a confusion piece. I know there's a miscommunication about what that is, why they should be focused on that, or why they shouldn't be focused on that, and what we would need to do to get them to a spot where they're operating a good agency and not a, 3 agencies in a SaaS coat.
But how about that new technology called AI? Could that perhaps introduce scalability to the agency game with like automation, templatization, or whatever?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what AI is going to do. Right now, it has made them more efficient. So margin expansion and scalability are 2 different things. So it's delivered some margin expansion. It will probably deliver more margin expansion. Whether or not that turns into an agency's ability to sell another project without adding another human or adding additional cost, because AI comes with a cost. I don't know. I don't know if they'll be able to agent out their entire workforce or most of their workforce and potentially scale that way. It's possible.
We'll listen back to this podcast in the year 2033 and then see if perhaps AI made that scalable dream come true.
Yeah, I hope so. I'll use it to scale my ops. That'd be sick.
Well, here's the hoping. You also point out that most agencies still rely heavily on referrals and only spend a measly 7% of their revenue on marketing and sales. What would be a healthier percentage, according to you?
Shit, you did read this report.
Yeah. All 40 pages of it.
Oh my God. Nice job. Okay, they spend 7.1% of revenue on sales and marketing activities, and that includes salaries. So it's not a lot. Here's the thing. That spend that's the average spend. It has been good for the average growth rate. So if you're fine growing at average growth rates, last year they were 4.5%, 5%. If you're good growing at that rate, spend the average amount on sales and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is that I speak to a lot of owners and I do consulting with a lot of agency teams that have much loftier growth goals than 5%. right? Like they come to me and they're talking about doubling in 2 or 3 years. They're talking about going like very fast on the growth pedal. And if you want to do that, well, you either have to spend more or you have to be more efficient with your spend. It has to be more effective. It has to do more per dollar. There are gains to be made on both of those avenues. I don't think you need to spend something like 30% of your revenue on sales and marketing. That's a little excessive. It's incredibly excessive. But getting that number up to 15, 14% can handle a lot of the growth challenges where like owners continuously reply to our surveys every year saying their top growth challenge or their top challenge is something to do with sales, marketing, leads, pipeline, something in that rev gen space. That additional spend solves a lot of those challenges, but you have to sacrifice margin to do it. So if your goal is growth, you have to sacrifice that margin to grow, or you could get more effective. And so you have to do the activities that are most efficient dollar per, wise to be able to get you to that growth. And there's only so much you can squeeze out of it. Like the average agency does need to invest a little bit more in sales and marketing. I think the average for most firms is something like 10%, 11%, outside of digital agencies. So if we're under that pretty significantly already, I think getting up to that kind of baseline is really, it's going to make everybody's lives a lot easier.
Clear. And what are the most effective business development tactics for agencies right now that are perhaps being underutilized?
One, you already hit on it, which is a little frustrating to me because of how easy it is. It's referrals. Yeah. And the challenge here is you have your passive referrals that just kind of float into your firm when business is good. And that makes it really easy to grow. Throughout the 2010 to 2020, that's what a lot of agencies did. It was like hard to fail at growing an agency at that time period because there was so much business and it was just coming in passively. You had moderately decent SEO. You talk at one conference, like you're getting people coming in, you're getting clients saying, hey, I know a guy that can fix this for you. The other side of this is a systematized referral process that you actively go out and nurture and take activities, direct your sales and marketing teams to do activities that generate those referrals. And you create collateral that generates those referrals and you reduce the friction of getting a referral. That piece, that systematized process is gold. If that is like, if you do nothing else, that is the thing you should be focused on. That is the sales and marketing thing to grow an agency, because this is largely a trust-based business. And referrals at that space come with built-in trust. And it makes the whole process easier. Higher average lifetime values, lower sales cycles, so your days to close is lower. Usually higher dollars on the projects. Like it's better all around.
So the first one is stepping up your referral game with like new asset, new content, getting yourself out there and not being passive and lying in waiting until customer A refers customer B to you.
Yes. Ask for a referral.
Yep.
Find out when your customers are happy. Usually it's around a launch, some type of milestone. When they are, say, hey, we like to do more of this work that we've done for you. We're pretty good at it. Do you know anybody in this space? Can you refer us to people that, like, do you have friends that are working on this kind of challenge, whatever? Ask for it. A lot of places don't ask for referrals. They just wait for them to come in.
Okay.
That's number one. If you're not doing, or if you've already done referrals, you probably don't need anything else. But there's a large chunk of some, like, the thought leadership space and like real thought leadership, not just posting a regurgitated blog or some kind of like someone else's idea. If you have the experimentation within your firm that we talked about earlier, and you're actually trying new stuff and doing new things. Will Reynolds from Sears is really good at this. They he goes and experiments on like frontier stuff in the SEO space, and he's been doing it for years. And he posts about it. He posts what he sees. He posts what he's doing. He posts experiments, his results, new stuff he's found out. That kind of thing. That it is thought leadership, but thought leadership has such a negative connotation now because of all the garbage that's out there. That's not real thought leadership. That is real thought leadership. That is really something that someone is doing that is new, that is something that the rest of the industry couldn't replicate overnight. Find whatever that is in your space, have your team experiment with it, and then put it out there.
How involved should an agency founder or an agency boss really be in this business development?
They realistically will never get away from it.
No.
Like, it's not something that you ever get to the point where you're, well, I guess there's an edge case where if you're running a factory style shop and you're doing really like commoditized work and you're just really efficient at it, and you found some way to do that, and you're low price and all of that, you may be devoid of, or maybe divorced from the sales aspect of it. But most shops are run more like consultancies, and most shops grow from getting larger clients and doing larger projects. And here's the issue with trying to get out of sales, if that's the kind of path you're taking. Because it's such a trust-based business, the clients usually need to meet and know who's at the top of this organization. And even if you're not brought in until like that really late stage closing call, or super late in the process after some trust has been built by your sales team, usually there's still a situation where you need to be brought in to get the project across the finish line in a sales capacity.
So just one KPI question to finish things off, Nick. If you could force every agency leader to obsess over just one number, what would it be?
If you want like a quick health check, utilization rates are good for that. They'll tell you roughly, like, are you at burnout? Are you at not enough revenue or work? Are you in the middle and probably somewhat healthy? And you don't need to worry about that. Mm-hmm. So it really changes based on who you are and what you want out of your shops. That's why like each of our strategy projects that we do with agencies, it has to be custom. Like they're so different for everybody. Some people, it's really a positioning project.
Nick, thanks for your insights. You've given us a lot of data, a lot of opinions, but also a lot of hard facts behind a lot of gut feelings that some agency leaders have, and probably some wake-up calls here and there too. Now, where can people go if they want to dig deeper into your reports or follow your work?
Yeah, PrometheanResearch.com. That homepage we made it pretty good at directing everybody to the free reports that we put out, even some of the paid ones maybe, if we want to keep the lights on. Probably the easiest way to stay up to date on new research that we're doing is through the newsletter. So right at the bottom of the homepage, there's a sign up thing for the newsletter. It comes out twice a week, and there's little to no BS in it. It's not something that it takes me like a day or two to put together. So it's something that I spend a decent amount of time on to make sure it's not crap.
As a reader of the newsletter and the report, we can confirm this man does not mess about. It's some really good, clear, data-driven stuff with very little waffle, very little fluff. So go to PrometheanResearch.com and subscribe wherever you can. For you, dear listener, thanks for listening to Agency Life by Teamleader. If you're an ambitious agency leader ready to take your operations to the next level, then make sure to check out Teamleader Orbit, the magnificent software we make for agencies. Visit us at teamleader.eu/orbit and book your free assessment today.